Hello guys, you're welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to be making this beautiful pencil skirt with back vent. So if this is something that you are interested in learning, please stay tuned to the end of this video. So I've gone ahead to fold my fabric into two, making sure the closed side of the folding is facing towards me. So now I'm going to measure the length of the skirt. The length I'm supposed to use is 30 inches, but I'm going to add like extra 2 inches, which is going to serve as our hemming allowance, both at the hem line and at the waist point. So guys, I've gone ahead to mark the length of the skirt. So now on this closed side that is facing towards me, that's where I'm going to start all my measurements. So I'm going to start by measuring the length we are going to be using for the veins. So I'm going to be marking out 8 inches. If you like, you can make your own to be 10 inches, 12 inches, or even 14 inches. It depends on how full you want your vent to be. But I don't want mine to be too full, so I'm just going to mark out 8 inches all through the length of the skirts. So after marking out our vent, this is the line that is demarcating the end of our vent. So our vent is that point. So now the next thing is to mark out our zipper allowance, because we are going to be using zipper for this skirt. So I'm going to be marking out 1.5 inch for the zipper. I'm supposed to mark out 1 inch, but because I'm going to use lining for this clothes and I'm going to turn the zipper allowance in with lining, so I'm going to mark out 1.5 inch all through the length of the skirts. So guys, I've gone ahead to mark out the zipper allowance, and that spacing between the two lines is our zipper allowance. So we are going to start marking out all our circumference measurements, and that's going to start from the second line, from the line of the zipper allowance to the other side. So that top part that I marked as the length of the skirt is where I'm going to insert my waist circumference measurement. My waist circumference measurement is 9.25 of an inch. So I'm going to mark that out, and I'm going to add 2 inches extra as seam allowance. I'm sorry, I didn't know I was marking behind camera. So after marking that, the next thing is to mark out my hip line. My hip line normally is 9 inches, but because I'm going to like use like an inch or half of an inch to hem it at the waistline, so I'm just going to mark out 10 inches so that it will not be too short. So I've marked out 10 inches for my hip line, and I'm just going to form a straight line on that hip line. Then on that hip line, I'm going to insert my hip circumference measurement. My hip circumference measurement is 12 less a quarter of an inch. That means 11.3/4. So that's what I'm going to mark out now. So I'm going to mark out 11.3/4, which is my hip circumference. So after marking it out, I'm going to add 2 inches allowance to it as well. It's not necessary for you to add 2 inches allowance to yours, but because I go fat and slim every now and then, so I had extra 2 inches to all my measurements. So I'm now going to connect it from the waistline down to the hip line and down to the length of the skirt. I'm supposed to use hip curve for this, but I don't even know where I put that hip curve, so that's why I'm using freehand. So I'm just going to like pen it a bit at the down parts. If you want it to be pencil more than this, you can go ahead and pen yours to be more deeper than this. So now the next thing I'm going to do now is to cut off the skirts at that side that we just marked out. So I'm just going to cut it out now so we know what we are working on. So guys, this is the skirt that we are going to be working on. So the next thing we are going to do now is to mark out the length of our veins. So this length of our veins depends on how long you want yours to be. Normally I make my slit length 14 inches, so I wanted to make this vent length 14 inches as well, but I decided that I should increase it to 15 inches since it's going to cover up the back of my leg. So I eventually marked out 15 inches for the length of the vent. So some people go as high as going just an inch or 2 inches below their hip line measurement. So whatever is comfortable for you, use it. So now that we have marked out the vent, this down part is the vent. So we are going to cut it off. We are going to cut the upper part away from it. So while cutting it, make sure you are mindful of the zipper allowance so you don't cut into the zipper allowance. So guys, we have actually cut it out and this is our skirt. So this is what we are actually working on. As you can see, this is the other side is our main bodies of the skirt and this right here is the veins. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and cut lining for this skirt. So guys, I've gone ahead to cut the lining for the skirt, and as you can see, the lining is actually shorter than the fabric, and that's because I'm going to be turning the skirt at the down part. So the next thing now is to like start hemming the edge of the skirt. As you can see, the wrong side of this skirt is not so much different from the right side. So this stroke that we marked on the wrong side is what will be guiding us, so we'll not be sewing on the wrong side. So I'm going to open up the skirt now so we can go ahead to hem it. So guys, I've opened up the skirt and I'll place the lining on the right side of the skirt. So I'll place the lining of on the right side of the skirt the way I'm placing it now. So I'm just going to take it to my machine and align this down part properly. Then I'm going to like sew it down till I reach the other end of the skirt. So I've gone ahead to hem the edge of the skirt. See how it's looking. I don't know whether you are seeing the stitch line. So I've hemmed the edge of the skirt. So the next thing is that I'm going to spread my skirt on the table. So after spreading it, as you can see, the lining is shorter than the fabric. So I'm going to pull up the lining to align properly with the waist of the skirt and to the vent line. So I'm going to sew it down the way I'm using my hands to trace it. So I'm just going to take it to my machine and sew it down the way I'm tracing it now. So I'm going to sew it down like that. Then on the waistline as well, I'm going to sew it down, but I'm not going to sew the side because that's where we are going to be turning everything out. So guys, I've gone ahead to sew it down, and as you can see, I've turned it to the right side and I've given it a very good press both on the waistline, on the zip line and on the vent line. So the next thing we are going to do now is to place both sides of our back panel on each other. Remember, the vent is the one that is connecting the back panel together. So I will place it on each other like this, and remember I said we left 1.5 inch zipper allowance, but because we have turned it in with half an inch, we are left with 1 inch. So I'm going to take it to my machine now and go ahead to take in the 1 inch zipper allowance from the beginning of the fabric. I'll take it from the beginning of the fabric. I'll take it down to the end of the fabric. So I've gone ahead to take in the zipper allowance. So this is our zipper allowance. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to open up the skirt. So I'm just going to open it up now. Then I'm going to go ahead and press it open like this with an iron. Then I will insert the iron inside the vent as well and press that part open as well. So guys, I've gone ahead to press it open, and as you can see, it's looking all neat and beautiful. So I inserted my iron into the vent as well and pressed it open. So now we are going to start working on our vents. So the first thing we are going to do now is to mark out our vents width. Remember, the width that we marked out is 8 inches, but now it's 9 inches, and that's because of the zipper allowance that we added. So I'm just going to mark out 1 inch from the vent line so that I can remove the zipper allowance for it, because we are not using the zipper allowance for the vent. So this line I'm making now is separating the zipper allowance from the vent. So now that we have separated the zipper allowance, now we'll be left with 8 inches, which is our normal vent width that we measured the other time. So the next thing we are going to do is to divide our pleat into 4. So I'm going to be marking out 2 inches. So on the lines. So after marking out 2 inches, I'm just going to make it into a straight line. So guys, I've already divided it into 4 parts by marking out 2 inches. So the next thing I'm going to do is to take it to my machine and run a loose stitch down this line, and down this line. So I've gone ahead to run the loose stitch down that line. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to open up my skirts, because it's time we start forming our pleats to make the vent. So you are going to make use of steam iron because you want your iron to be very hot. So if your steam iron is not steaming like mine, you can make use of water. Just make sure that your iron is very hot so that your clothes won't burn. You have to pour water on it. So now the first thing is to start with our first stitch. So we are going to place the first stitch on the stitch of the zipper allowance. The first stitch that we just made now, we are going to place it on the stitch of the zipper allowance, making sure that it's sitting properly on it. So we are going to do the same on the upper part as well. So when you are sure that the stitch of the first stitch is sitting down on the stitch of the zipper allowance, then you can now press it with your iron to form a pleat. I hope you understand what I just said. You are going to make sure that you align the stitch of the first stitch that we just made to the stitch of the zipper allowance. So when you do that, it's going to form a pleat. So you are just going to press it down on both sides with your iron. I hope you get it. If you don't get it, guys, just be looking at what I'm doing. So guys, we have successfully created our first pleat on both sides. So now we are going to start creating the second pleat. To do the second pleat, we are going to do it like we did the first pleat. That means the second pleat, the stitch of the second stitch, we are going to make sure that it's sitting directly on that first stitch. That means that it is indirectly sitting on the stitch of the zipper allowance. So we are going to align the stitch of the that second stitch. We are going to align it and make sure it's sitting properly on the first stitch. So when you are sure that it's already sitting properly, make sure that you just give it a good press to form the pleat. Please guys, you have to just be patient when you are forming this pleat so that you can get the best result, because if you are rushing through this process, you might not be able to form your pleat, or your pleat might scatter after you form it, or it might not be even be sitting well. But guys, to ensure that it's sitting well, make sure that you are patient with it. So I'm just going to rush through the process of the remaining plates. Guys, if you don't understand this, you can rewatch the video until you understand, guys. Please make sure you understand it. Thank you. So guys, to make the last pleats, as we have been pressing it the other since we started making these pleats, the last pleat already formed the crease at the midpoint. So you are going to make sure that you align that crease that it has formed at the midpoint, you align it to all the other stitches. So see the way I'm doing it, guys. I'm making sure that the crease that has been formed is properly aligned to all the other stitches. So after aligning it, I'm going to press it the same way I've been pressing the other stitches. So guys, we have successfully formed our pleats, our back vent pleat, and as you can see, it's looking so beautiful and fine as it is there. So I'm just going to run a stitch to hold down the pleat. So where I'm marking out now is where I'm going to place the stitch. So I'm just going to take it to my machine now and run this V-shaped stitch on it to hold down the pleat. So guys, I've run the stitch down to it to hold the pleat. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to make sure that I loosen the stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and loose the stitch for this skirt, all the stitches I made, starting from the one for the zipper allowance. Then I'm going to go ahead to remove the stitch, the first stitch, second stitch, and third stitch. After that, I'm going to bring it back to show us the final look of our skirt. So guys, this is the skirt. So now I'm just going to open up the pleat so that you can see how beautiful it looks, see how it's spread out. Then when the person sits down again, it's going to close up, and that's because we actually pressed it very well. So I will let us see how it looks on the right side as well. It's looking so neat and beautiful. Guys, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Please do well to like this video, comment in the comment section to let me know whether you learned something from this video. Subscribe to this channel and share this video to your friends. Till next time, bye.